The advice and opinions expressed by Dr. Granpeesheh and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Good morning and welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. Look who's here. It's Dr. Doreen.
Good morning.
Good morning. Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is here with us because it wouldn't be Ask Dr. Doreen without you. I mean, what would it be? Me sitting in a chair by myself. But anyway, we're here. We're live. Today is, I don't know what today is. It's Tuesday.
Yes.
It's September
9th, I believe.
9th already?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks for knowing, because I didn't know. Anyway, we're live. It's 2025, for those of you who are keeping track. I have a cough drop in my mouth, and it's decided to be difficult. That's why I sound like I have a lisp. In any case, we're here, and Dr. Granpeesheh donates this time to answer your questions in real time. Now, we did a show last week talking about recovery, what the word means, what it doesn't mean. It obviously, you guys had some questions. We didn't get to some of the questions, and you guys wrote in some more things. So we're going to hit that topic again. Before we do that, though, I want to say that we're live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We love it when you guys interact with us. So feel free to write in. Our wonderful, fabulous Chris Desmond is taking care of business and letting you see that you can, all the different ways that you can be watching the show. Don't forget that Ask Dr. Doreen is its very own podcast that you can subscribe just to Ask Dr. Doreen. And you can watch on YouTube. Their own. It's its own YouTube channel. You can be writing in right now on any of those platforms, however you'd like to do it. I do want to let you know, though, that some of you who listen in podcasts say that you would like the feed with no ads. We get that. We understand that. Everybody has preferences how they would like to consume their information. If you go to glow.fm/autism live, when you subscribe for just a low cost of $5 a month, you get everything that we do at the Autism Network, and it shows up in your inbox ad-free, which is lovely for $5 a month.
Absolutely.
So very easy to do. I definitely want you to check that out. Now, before we get to our topic, though, I have a couple of things. Last week, I forgot to mention the disclaimer that you are a wonderful, fabulous, brilliant expert in this field. I believe the expert in our time. For me, that's true. For a lot of other people, that's true. But in this format, it is impossible for anyone to give individually specific advice. Right. But it doesn't mean that you can't write and ask a question, and the more detail you give Dr. Doreen, the better she will be able to help you to connect to resources. We always love when you tell us where you are in the world so that we have an idea of what might be close to you that would be of benefit to you, because it's not the same everywhere.
Right, exactly.
I wish that it were, but it's not. So definitely write in, let us know what's going on with you and where you are, and be as specific as possible. That's the truth of it. I will say that over the now 15 years that we have been doing this, so many of you have written and said how helpful the content is and how much you appreciate Dr. Granpeesheh's point of view. I am in that camp too. But before we get into the questions about recovery and talking more about that, we have an amazing event coming up.
Oh, yeah. Very exciting.
That's really shaping up quite lovely. The 4th annual All Ghouls Gala, which will be held on October 25th this year. It's the premier Hollywood event for adults for Halloween. This is not a kiddie party. This is a serious business fun in the fundraiser.
Yes,
is what we like to say. It is a lot of fun, and you are somebody who is very good at the costume thing.
Oh, you really have to get into it.
Yeah, and she does.
I'm in a theme now.
Okay, well, I think I might know, but we're not going to ask you what you're going to be this year.
But you know my theme.
I do know your theme. I'm not going to tell your theme because I want people to be surprised. But I have also figured out my Halloween costume, but it needs a little bit of work. So we all get into it. It is a costume party.
Yes.
Celebrity attended. I don't think I've had a chance to tell you that Joe Montaigne has already RSVP'd that he will be with us.
Oh, that's
on that day.
wonderful.
So,
We
and we have
love
a-
having him there.
and bringing, his lovely family, and
That's
it's
right.
it's that level of an event, you guys.
That's
So,
wonderful.
and we have, I think next week we'll announce some things about honorees. So, we have one that, but I'm keeping it under my hat for one more week. So, but we have another that I'm just waiting back to hear from that I think we're good. So, in any case, it's a wonderful event. It raises money for Autism Care Today, the fabulous charity that you founded. You're the president of. And I love that it's a charity that doesn't tell a family what they need. It says, what do you need? There's, a grant phase that happens and families apply for the thing that they need, whether that is an iPad or help with an assistance dog or help with
Right.
co-pays or what have you. They can tell the charity what they need.
Right.
But the problem is that the charity can only fund grants while there's money. So there has to be fundraising, but why not make it fun for the fundraising? So Chris has, so he's going to show one of our promos. We have two that we're going to show throughout the show today, and I'm not sure. One of them is scary and one of them is informative. So, I don't know which one he's going to show.
But here we go.
The heart. He's showing me the heart. We're gonna hear the informative one.
Great.
What kinds of grants that it. So take a look. All Ghouls Gala.
It's that time of year when everyone gets all dolled up.
That's funny. We're seeing this.
They put on their best face and they bring a friend to the fourth
That's okay.
annual All Ghouls Gala that raises funds for
I thought I
Autism Care
misread.
Today. Mark your calendars for the 25th of October. It's going to be a real scream.
Well, you
And
have to
prepare to
read
run to get your tickets
audio.
before they're all gone.
Okay, so I misread the hand signals. That was the scary one. I apologize if you have kiddos that were watching that. And if you were hearing it in podcast, it doesn't sound that scary. But we'll show the informative one a little bit later on. But we kind of want to launch in here. We had a discussion about recovery last week, and I thought it was I was really amazed at the positive things that we were hearing from people back. And one person in particular who said, I'm so glad to see this episode. I have two children diagnosed with autism, 7-year-old girl, 13-year-old boy. My son was diagnosed at 5 and started ABA at 7. My daughter was diagnosed at 3 and started ABA immediately. She has recovered. People who meet her now would be shocked that she ever had that diagnosis. My son still has a ways to go, but he is doing so much better than we could have expected. I don't know if he will ever be recovered in the way that his sister has been, but he is definitely going to be able to have a full and good life, and I think it is possible that he will someday have a family and career. I wanted to make sure that you knew that they wrote that in, but I do think
That's wonderful.
kids are all different, right? But this really speaks to me about the power of early intervention.
For sure, but I mean, and I think the key to it, Shannon, is that kids are all different, and we don't know where they started out,
Yeah.
and there could be a lot of other things going on as well with the son in particular. But I love that you, Mom, wrote into us because that's just very meaningful to me to hear. Thank you.
Absolutely. I have another question. Dr. Granpeesheh, I'm a behavior technician with an autism diagnosis. I love ABA and the work I get to do with my clients. However, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the word recovery. And I would love to hear what you mean when you use the term. I want to understand what you mean. And I know you covered a lot of this last week, but I think it's worthwhile to start the show with you kind of just recapping for this person who has already identified themselves as being on the spectrum, but who loves ABA.
Right. And I'll do my best to not take up the entire show because
It's your show.
It's a
okay.
very important topic, and I have to make sure that I address it correctly.
Yeah.
So, from a clinical perspective, you have to have a set of symptoms at a certain severity in order to qualify for a diagnosis of autism. A lot of times, The example I think I used a few times last week, and I'll use again, is that someone will come and say to a psychologist, for instance, that, I feel I'm really depressed. And that doesn't really fit the diagnosis of major depressive disorder, right? It's not, the severity may not be enough, and the number of symptoms may not be enough. And it's the same with autism. There are very specific symptoms within two different areas of functioning. One is the area of social communication, and the other is the area of what we call stereotypic repetitive behaviors. And you do need to have, 5 total symptoms, 3 in this area and 2 in that area, in order to actually receive the diagnosis. And it's a variety of different types of symptoms, but you do need to meet those specific 5. And then once you do, the other part of it is that the severity has to be enough to, in some way, disrupt your life, right? So anything that we call a disorder, and I don't really like the word disorder, but it's anything that is in the diagnostic manual of mental disorders requires that it detract from some aspect of your life. Because if it doesn't, then it's not really something that would be classified as a disorder. So those are the 2 criteria, right? And it also, of course, needless to say, it cannot be due to some other thing. For instance, another illness or a use of drugs or whatever else. It cannot be caused and resulting from something else. And so when those symptoms all are present, and typically these symptoms are present very early in life, and we see those symptoms, and then let's say later at some point, not all of those symptoms are present anymore. So therefore, or some of the symptoms may be present, but they are no longer at a severity that disrupts your life. Then we as clinicians will say you do not qualify for a diagnosis of autism. And so that can be termed recovered from autism, remediated from autism, no longer meets the criteria for the symptoms or characteristics of autism. So however you want to, describe it or state it, the fact is that that individual would no longer receive that diagnosis. And that's really what it means to us as clinicians. And I think it's important because I think that there are individuals who say, hey, I identify with this and I don't want these things to be taken away from me. And that's really not the goal of ABA. The goal of ABA is not to change your personality or your character in any way, but it is to remove or reduce things that are symptoms that are causing you trouble in your life. And when I say trouble, most of the time, even individuals who are extremely minimally affected by autism, very minimally affected, so in the past would have had a diagnosis of, let's say, Asperger's, even those individuals will often come and seek help because they feel alone, alienated. They can't figure out how to socialize. They can't figure out how to interact with others in a way that is accepting and makes them feel accepted and loved. And so I think even those individuals would say that, yes, I would like to receive ABA. I would like to learn how to, the word might, how to overcome or how to maybe regulate the symptoms that I have, the intrinsic parts of me that I don't want to give up, but I want to regulate in a way that I can fit into society. And that's really important. An example of that would be, for instance, a young child who has learned, has no language, therefore doesn't really communicate well, and therefore has learned to scream whenever they want an object, right? And so that child will naturally, if they were to go through life that way, they'll be alienated. They will be isolated because nobody wants to interact with a child who is screaming or perhaps even becoming aggressive because they don't know any other way to communicate, right? Through ABA, we teach communication and we teach the child better ways to interact, to request the things they want. And so as a result, that part of what they had, that had become a part of their means of communicating is now replaced with appropriate communication. And as a result, they can socialize more. Another example would be an individual who, for instance, says, hey, I don't feel comfortable interacting with people and giving them eye contact, right? That's a very well-known symptom of autism, is that the individual is uncomfortable giving eye contact. And that's perfectly fine as long as the individual is able to find social relationships and friendships and places where that is acceptable to friends and family and so on and so forth. But if they feel that, hey, nobody interacts with me, maybe it's because I'm not giving them eye contact or I'm not interacting with them in the same way, and they come and seek help, and we say, of course, we're going to help you to overcome that or to regulate that in a way that you can interact with others. So the whole thing is very much based on the desire and the wishes of the individual. When it's a child, of their parents, what they want for the individual. It really has nothing at all to do with changing the individual's personality or character in any way. In fact, a lot of my kids, who I will proudly say have recovered from autism, have maintained their beautiful characters from when they were children.
Absolutely. This is kind of ridiculous examples, but my mother used to always say to us, I'm going to teach you how to clean the house. And then you decide if you're going to use that knowledge or not.
Exactly.
Right? And then when I was teaching college, one of the jobs that I had at college was that I taught speech. And what that meant for, because I taught theater, is that people would come to me. I taught in upstate New York, and so people would come into the class and they would have a big, Long Island accent, right?
Yes.
But maybe they want to do a Shakespeare play where the director doesn't want a Long Island accent, right? So I would teach them how to level out their regionalisms. And some of them would say it was a crisis for them about what, so am I not supposed to speak the way I speak at home?
Yeah.
Like, when I go home for Thanksgiving, if I talk this way, I'm going to get beat up in my own house.
Right.
And I would always say to them, no, you talk however you want. I'm giving you choices.
Right.
So that on any given day, if you choose to go in and you want to do a proper British dialect, or you want to play somebody who's from Jersey, or you want to play somebody who, is from Missouri or Minnesota, you have choices.
Right.
But those are just skills that you have at the ready. I'm not asking you to sound like you're from New Hampshire the rest of your life.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, and I always thought of it the same way. Let's give him as many choices, and he can decide what he wants to do with them.
Yeah, and I will say, Shannon, one thing I don't want to ignore is that for all of us, there's a sense of security in belonging to a subgroup.
Yeah.
All of us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like I belong to multiple different groups, right? I belong to the group of mothers. I belong to the group of Persians. I belong to the group of women CEOs, whatever. There's multiple groups that we belong to, right? And so I think that is not something that, I'll give you an example. When I was the CEO of Card, right? And then I wasn't because I retired. And I do remember the feeling of, wow, I'm no longer a CEO of a company, you know? And I do understand that feeling of like, I don't want this to be taken away from me because it is my identity.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone can take your identity away, no matter what. Who you are is who you are.
Yeah,
and if you identify as being part of the world of autism, you will always be able to identify as being part of that.
And I want to, I'm so tentative about this, but this is a whole other separate log to throw on this fire, but I feel
Okay,
like it.
please.
So there's a group that I belong to on Facebook, and the parents posted this, but they said, let's talk about misappropriation. That there's a lot of parents that are really upset that there needs to be more terms for things. And I've always heard there needs to be adult diagnosed autism and child diagnosed autism, because they feel that it's a misappropriation of what their child's diagnosis is. But now they're taking it a step further. They posted this just this last week. They said, we need to differentiate between autism as a disorder, which is ASD, and autism as a personality trait, which they're calling BAP. If there are
What is BAP?
well, they're saying that BAP broader autism phenotype.
Interesting.
Okay, so they say if there is no significant impairments in someone's daily life, it isn't autism spectrum disorder. If autism is someone's personality, identity, superpower, gift, etc., but they have no impairments, that is an ASD, that's BAP, broader autism phenotype, autistic traits without impairments. I just wondered what you thought of that.
I mean, I don't really have any thoughts about that. If there are individuals who feel they would like that and that's what they connect to, great.
But it's not ASD, is their point.
Well, it's not a disorder.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Totally. And
yeah.
you have to be careful, by the way, because there are a series of personality disorders that are also in the diagnostic manual, but you're not talking about that. You're just talking about a personality type.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
It would help a lot of people maybe feel more part of something that doesn't necessarily need to change.
Well, I think it also would help the parents who, listen, we're all thrilled when an adult comes forward that's in the public eye and says, hey, I just got a diagnosis and now I understand myself so much better. But then there's a bunch of parents who are like, yes, but you were able to get through all the things that and maybe it was hard for you, but you got through. My child couldn't. And parents get really upset that then the world sees it as vanilla and it's all the same thing, and that it's not.
That's right. But it isn't about, and I want to say this to the parents, it's not about, whether you're diagnosed as a child or an adult. Indirectly it is, because it's about severity. That's what it's really about.
Yes.
And because if you are extremely mildly affected, you will either not ever receive the diagnosis at all, or maximum you will receive a diagnosis at a 1-1 level.
Right.
And that's a very different experience than an individual whose severity level is a 3-3 level, who may never be able to communicate, who may never be able to take care of themselves, who has a significant number of ritualistic behaviors that detract from life, who, it's a very, very different thing. And I really want to always stand up for those individuals because they don't have a voice.
Right.
And I think it's extremely important that we don't allow anything to minimize the difficulty of their lives and their experiences and their families' lives, because it is not easy to have level 3 autism or to be the family member of an individual with that severity of autism. Let's just be very clear about that.
Amen to that. Okay, this is a very interesting one. I have a 3-year-old who was just diagnosed with autism. I want to be clear that I don't have any issue with my son thinking differently, processing differently, seeing the world differently. I think the world could use a lot more of that. But I want him to be able to be free to do all the things that he wants to in life. I don't want him to be disabled. Or I want to make sure that that isn't more than it has to be.
Great.
If there is a chance that he and his beautiful brain can be in the world and help it to see better, I want that for him.
Wonderful.
I have had a self-advocate tell me that that is me being selfish.
Not at all, my goodness.
She goes on to say, my response was, I'm fighting for my son to have the chance to say the same thing that you just said to me. So I just want to know that it's possible. Tell me what is possible.
Absolutely.
I want to cry.
I know, that is so touching, and no one should ever tell you that you are being selfish when you're trying to give your child skills that will help them succeed and thrive in life. And let's just be clear, that's what you're doing. That's what you want for your child. That's what we all want for our children. So 100% you should not give up on this dream for your child. And whether or not it's possible, it is possible for some children. It is not possible for all children. I wish it was, but we have not yet figured out all of the underlying things that cause severe autism or just cause the symptoms of autism. And so but I will tell you that, across the board, the earlier you start with interventions, the better. This kind of leads us into one of our other shows, Shannon, where we talk about all the, like the 10 things. So you need to be able to make sure your child's physical health is good. So, you need to make sure that your child doesn't have gastrointestinal issues. If they do, you're treating those. If they have immune dysfunction, if they do, you're treating those. You want to make sure that if your child is sensitive to or has allergies, you have the correct diets and are giving your child the appropriate foods that are also provide nutritional value. You want to make sure that your child is, because all of those things help your child learn better, obviously. And so you want to make sure your child is sleeping, because that contributes significantly to how much we learn from our environment, how focused we can be. And then you definitely want to pay attention to your child's sensory input. How do they learn? Do they learn through visual, contextual cues, through auditory cues? What's the best modality of teaching? And then you want to be able to use the techniques of ABA, which is just behavioral psychology, to teach your child all the things they need in order to be more capable in society, and to be more interactive in social environments, and those are the main things. And it's that everything I said is not easy. It's a lot of work, but you as the parent will be your child's best advocate through this journey and through their life. So yeah, and I wish you the best, and I wish that you would write to us, and I'm happy to guide you more if I know more about your child.
Yeah, we'd love to be on your team virtually.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Please continue to write in. We have a question that has come in online from our dear friend Mike Hipple.
Okay.
Mike says, let's say we have a 6th grader who is starting middle school, but they don't show any signs of autism. Should you tell the teacher about ASD or not?
I don't know that you necessarily need to if your child has no signs. And the reason I say that is that there's a lot of people in the world who still are very, there's a potential that there will be a stigma attached here, so that they will not have the same expectations of your child that they would of others. And I think it's important for our kids to be challenged and to be given the same opportunities. So I don't know that it's necessary for you to tell anyone at this point.
Yeah, it's a hard one for me as a parent.
Yes.
But if there are no signs, I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I might consider just let's say that there's no signs of autism, but you have a concern about how would they react, let's say in a fire drill or something like that. Mm-hmm. I would make sure that I worked on that at home. And if I felt like there was a question about something in a safety situation, I might say something to them about ADHD or something. Not
or just describe it. You don't have to label it.
Exactly. and say, just know that,
and with loud noises, he's going to have a very significant reaction. Something like that,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah. Just
because
like any other-
unfortunately, we can't control what other people know and what other people think and how they react, and there is a fair amount of discrimination.
right.
And it doesn't have to be ill-intended, right?
Yes.
I've talked about it before that my son had a terrible 6th grade teacher. I hope she's watching. Hated her. And I don't hate anybody, but I really wanted to throttle this woman, and I'm not a violent person, because at the end of the year, we were sitting in an IEP, and there was just all these dots that I couldn't connect of why he was having such a hard time. And we were going through something, and I said, I don't understand why on this test this happened. And she said, well, because he was in the other room by himself during the test. And I said, what are you talking about? And she goes, well, we always move him to a room by himself during tests because, people on the spectrum can't handle noise while they're trying to concentrate. And that's when I said, okay, we're all the way done here. Let's close the books and whatever. And I said, my lawyer will be contacting you.
Yeah.
Do you know? Because that's discrimination.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was not anywhere in any document or IEP
anything.
that he should be removed from the classroom. And they were leaving him with the other kids. The other kids were having the instructions explained to them. And he was being sent to the other room with no instruction. I mean, so you understand why I dislike this woman greatly.
Yeah,
right? But
yeah,
and she was supposed to be this wonderful, and she sat there and was like, I don't understand why you're upset about that.
Yeah, she was doing us a favor.
The administrators were like, yeah, no, we're done here. Don't say anything else.
I do want to also, though, say that, and I think that question came from a parent whose child is in middle school.
This is from Mike, who's not the parent, but a wonderful advocate.
Right.
Right. So, yes.
But it's a middle school child, right? I do
Yes.
think, I do want to just add that a little bit later maybe, or even in middle school, the child themselves may really want to tell people. And that's something that we need to also respect. So, that's important too. It's
Yes.
not just,
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, here's a great question that I knew was going to come up last week. Is what you call recovery just being able to mask really well for longer periods of time, and how can you tell that it's not?
So I love that someone brought that up. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that, actually, because this word masking, I want to talk about that for a minute, because I think it's really, really good. So if I have PTSD, if I have post-traumatic stress disorder, and over time I expose myself gradually more and more to the stimulus that evoked trauma in me, and I am now able to, through lots of practice and exercises, I'm able to breathe through it and reduce my anxiety, or control, better way to say it, control my physiological anxiety response in the presence of that stimulus. Would I be masking my response? I think, according to the definition of masking, I would. So the question is, all the things that we learn in life that which I refer to as self-regulating, right? We self-regulate in lots of different ways. For instance, lots and lots of different ways. But think of the 4-year-old child who is used to running around home and screaming when they want something, and they go to school, and now the teacher teaches them that running and screaming is not okay, and you have to stay in your seat and control yourself, regulate yourself. They would be masking the need to scream and run around.
Yeah.
Or think of the individual who has to, I don't know, repeatedly go to the bathroom and wash their hands because they feel that there are more germs in the environment, and they do this they force themselves to not do it as often as they used to. They're masking that internal need to go and wash their hands. So I think in a lot of ways, and I could give you 100 examples, we all mask internal unregulated desires and needs. We all do. It's in Freudian psychology, forgive me for bringing Freud into it for a minute as a behaviorist, but I do respect a lot of things that we learned from psychoanalysis, psychodynamic psychology. Freud divided the personality into three parts, the ego, the id, and the superego. The id is that kind of like the child within, right? The free, what we are when we're a baby, what we are when we're 1 or 2, what we are before we're in any way regulated or tamed. There are other very well-known authors who call it, the taming of the human. So before that, the id rules, right? Because a baby wants something, they cry, they get it. A 1-year-old wants something, they'll bang and they'll get it. So it's a very, uncontrolled, unregulated. And then comes along the parent or the rules of society or whatever you might want to call it, the conscience, which is the superego, right? And it kind of controls, regulates that id. Yeah. And the result of these two becomes the ego, right? That's the person. In lay terminology, we refer to the ego as something completely different, but in psychology, the ego is the true self, which is a combination of the id and the superego. And the superego is conscience, guilt, like learning the right thing, all of that. All of those things that we learn teach us to mask the id. Yeah. And so as human beings, we're always naturally masking certain things. So yes, you could certainly feel free to say that the individual with autism who has learned not to exhibit those symptoms of autism that would otherwise cause them to be socially isolated, if they no longer exhibit those, feel free to say they mask them. I have no problem with what word you use. The bottom line is they go through life not exhibiting those symptoms.
But I wonder, I think the more practice that you have at something, I always use the phrase, in My Fair Lady, when they're teaching her how to speak the other way, I brought up dialects before, they're teaching her the other way, and then all of a sudden, it's not just about them teaching it, she gets it. And he says, by George, I think she's got it. Right? And at some point, I remember when I was learning how to drive, how it was so rote.
Your brain becomes...
And then it just became something that I did unconsciously. Are there times that I have to concentrate on something? Yes.
There you go.
But there are whole periods of time when I drive and my brain can be someplace else.
Absolutely. And I think a really good example, one of our kids, Nick, in our video, Recovered, says, there's a segment where he says, a joke, and then the therapist who's with him says, where'd you get that joke from? And he says, well, I kind of made it up myself because I'm trying to practice telling jokes, because when I was younger, I would always give something away in the beginning. I'd give away the punchline. And so he's practicing, and I know him, one of the things I love about him is that he's so good at self-analysis. I admire that about him so much. I've told him that many times. And he will tell me all the things that he's practicing like that, right? Another one of my kids, I remember, used to tell me that I couldn't focus on language because I was so distracted by the sounds in the environment that were much louder to me than the sound of language. But over time, of course, not only did he learn to mask that or overcome that, it became second nature to him, of course, and he's a very, very successful biostatistician now. So I think that, as you said, Shannon, we begin by practicing those things, maybe masking them in however you want to call it, but over time it becomes natural to us.
Yeah. The example that I've been using a lot lately, when we just were at some of the offices and I took my son, I remember when he was very little, he was taught a program, Salutations.
Yes.
And it was a lot. Like, he really had to learn when somebody comes in the room that you have to acknowledge them. Right. Like, that did not come to him naturally, and it was really something we were teaching him. We had to make it reinforcing for him because he saw no value in it whatsoever. And then later when he was older, he suddenly, I'll tell you how he started to see value in it, was he started, when we taught him the safety lesson, he had to notice, do they have a name tag?
Right.
Well, he was also learning how to read at the same time, so he would out loud read the name of the person's name tag, and then they would give him a big reaction.
There you go.
Like, one of the first times was we were at Disneyland, and one of the, the workers was there, and she said something to him, and he said, "Oh, thank you, Sandy." And she said, "Oh,
yeah."
And she reached in her pocket and she gave him a crystal slipper and said, "Oh, you're such a nice boy, and you read my name." And he went, "Oh, there's value in this for me."
Yeah.
So now this became a big thing, and then he learned how to shake hands.
Right.
And he learned, and if you make eye contact while you're shaking hands, that like you get a big reaction, like people think you're all grown up. So there we were, but now this is years ago, and he does this all the time now.
Right.
And we were at one of the offices, and two dads walked in, and I introduced myself. I said, "Hi, I'm the director of parent relations, and my child was treated at CARD, and so nice to meet you." And they were like, "Oh, nice to meet you." And the one dad said, "Well, how's your son doing right now?" And I said, "Oh, well, this is him."
Yeah.
He was standing right there. And Jem, right on cue, reached out his hand, and he said, "Hi, nice to meet you. I'm," and said his name. And the dad literally clutched his chest and said, "Wait a second, you used to be a kid." Because that reaching out, and that was not him masking anymore. That's his. Right. There was for a time.
That's right.
But the dad saw that and literally clutched his chest and said, "You used to be one of the kids here.
Right.
This is possible."
Right.
And he literally was clutching his chest and said, "Well, I feel more hope today than I've ever felt."
Right.
Which was huge for
That's
for
right.
Jem. That was like, I'm glad I came. But the whole purpose of telling that is that, now he just reaches out and shakes hands.
Right.
And it is there's no part of him that's remembering us teaching him
Absolutely.
that. For him, he knows there's a benefit for him in that people see him as somebody who is a confident adult.
Right.
And that there's value in that for him. So anyway, I digress. Dr. Granpeesheh, how did you know that recovery from autism is possible? Why does the world act like it's something that isn't?
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you for asking. I guess I'm trying to think. Yeah, that would be my first real experience with it. Yeah. So I didn't really think in terms of recovery for quite a long time. No one's ever asked me this question before, so it's kind of interesting that I'm thinking about it now. It would be with one of my very early children, Adam, that I didn't even pay attention to it really, but I was teaching him a lot continuously, and then realized he's functioning like all the other kids in the classroom. And to me, it was like, whoa, we just completely, this was even before I was a licensed psychologist. So his parents took him, I remember this so clearly, his parents took him to some, really well-known psychiatrist, diagnostician, and the person said he doesn't have autism. And I remember his dad calling me and saying, he's your first recovered child. And I remember that because I was still a grad student.
Wow.
And I had just finished at UCLA, and I was doing my postdoctoral internships. Of course, before that at UCLA, there were lots and lots of children who were part of our study and who had been recovered. Yeah. I knew that some of them, but I had worked with them after they had started. And so I never knew the level of the severity of their diagnosis when they first started, because they had started back in the very early 70s, right? So I knew that there was such a thing as recovery, But this was the first child whose journey I went through completely from the time he was 2, and I went with him across the board, for 3, 4, 5 years. So for me, it has always just been of course, of course, if we can start early enough, if the child is not affected to a point where no matter how much we teach, we're not actually getting them close to their own chronological age. For me, it's always been, okay, your mental age and your chronological age are the same when you are typically developing,
right?
Okay? And so that means when you do a test of intelligence, let's say, you are functioning at the same level as everyone your age.
Yeah.
That's just basically how we test individuals, how we classify individuals. And so for me, when I was working with kids and I saw how rapidly they're catching up to their peers, I realized I've never looked at ABA as anything other than a very, very, very effective way of teaching. And if it's done right and if it's done intensively, everything is possible.
Yeah.
Everything. Because I think of ABA, I mean, as over the course of years, having become a very, very strongly believing behavioral psychologist, I do believe that you can change behavior through these techniques, and you can even change internal behavior, cognitive behavior.
Of course.
So so for me, it's always been of course.
You've just given me an amazing idea, though, that I as a parent didn't call the person and say congratulations, it's your 5th or whatever kid it was, but I want to make a tradition at CARD that when kids graduate, that the parents present something to that BCBA,
right,
to say thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can do it,
and
for
it's
kids
so
that
meaningful.
Well, we need to have that tradition.
I mean, Shannon, that recently I just got that kind of email from one of my prior graduates, right?
Oh my gosh.
And
gold.
I shared it with you. Yeah, and it's gold, and it was out of nowhere, right? He just found me on LinkedIn, and he sent me this email, and I thought, and it just, I shared it with you, and that got me thinking about so many of my graduates, and it was about the same time that you and Jim were traveling. And I was like, it's just there's nothing more meaningful to us as that, because that's what we've done in our lives. That there's nothing more important than what we've done with those individuals. And for this young man to reach out to me without, I didn't ask for that, and him just saying, I just wanted to thank you. And this is 25 years later. Yeah. It's insane. It's the most powerful thing.
You're gonna make me ugly cry.
It's the most powerful thing.
Well, and for good reason.
I don't want to. I want to make sure we do address this dad.
Okay, I'm not seeing what you're seeing.
So this is from The Good Father.
Yes.
It says, "Hi, Dr. Doreen. I'm from India. You saw my son 3 to 4 years ago. He is 8 years now. Goes to neurotypical classroom with no SEN support now. He forgets to submit his homework sometimes.
Okay.
Then he says, which executive functioning targets should I check and how should I work on them?
Okay.
So this is one of those cases where I'm happy to just say you need to get back on Skills, our platform, Skills Global, and there you will get a lot of guidance on the executive functioning targets. What it sounds like is you need to look kind of in the area of organization skills. It is not uncommon for our kids, for every kid, for all kids, to require these lessons because, he's 8, yeah. So what happens is we transition from grades in school where we are given very specific instructions today for something that has to happen tomorrow, and then in the evening a parent reminds us, you don't forget to do your math homework for tomorrow, and we do the homework, and then you go to school and the teacher prompts, okay kids, turn in your homework. So there's a prompt for all of it, and then you eventually get to an age, maybe 8, here in the States I'd say it's a little bit later, where you're given homework where it isn't due tomorrow, maybe it's due in 2 days or 3 days, and it's a little bit of a bigger project. And so those require organization skills, and that does fall under executive functions. So I think you would need to go through a series of lessons that teach your child planning, which involves organization, which involves things like, where do I write the instructions and when do I come back to check it? And let me just say, this is a skill that's necessary for everyone. Like, people who are very good at organizing are very successful, and people who suffer and are not good at organizing continue to struggle their whole lives. Organizing,
but some of it,
is
correct me if I'm wrong,
important.
but the majority of people now are using some sort of a planner. And
Well,
the ability to use the planner, and a lot of it is online. Like people
like
use
schedules, like
yes,
Outlook schedules
with
but
reminders and alarms.
Shannon,
and,
you would be surprised
No,
how
I
many people don't do that, and how
Exactly.
extremely difficult it is for them
Yes.
to get through life.
Yes.
Because there are a million things that we all need to do, and so this is just an example, and it's a good opportunity to teach him these skills.
But I think that part of it is, when I was teaching junior high, the main thing that we were told that our responsibility was to teach them how to use their planner.
Yes.
In every assignment we gave, it was now write it down
Absolutely.
on this day, and now write this date of
Absolutely.
when it's due.
Yes.
Because I do see in life people, and now all the AI commercials for all the things that you can wear a thing around your neck, and then it sends you what your tasks are from the meeting. I mean, it's because nobody can remember anymore.
That's also a good point.
Right? But if you have something that prompts you, and now using the technology to prompt you is what I see is making more and more people, and I see people even with extreme ADHD, if they're taught how to use the thing and then use it, it's life-changing,
Absolutely.
game-changing.
Absolutely.
But how amazing that your child is now 8 years old, and that seems like a typical 8-year-old problem.
Yes,
not
it is.
handing in your homework.
100%.
And of course, we always want to say there's got to be a big reinforcer for handing it in.
Yes, for sure. I think at this point you need prompts and reinforcers always.
There we go. Do you have case studies of children that have recovered from autism? What are they doing now? Why aren't there more of them? That's the question I always love.
I love that question. Yes, we do. In fact, first of all, I published on this subject, and the publication was, I believe, I'm trying to remember if it was 32 kids. I think it was 32 children who were who were individually, and it was a retroactive analysis where we taught these individuals, and then we went back and tested them after they were finished. So all of their test results are published in this one study. So that is one. So that's a very good, it's not really, it's a retrospective analysis of 32 or 34 cases of recovery. So that's a good one. I would recommend that you look at our video, which is online, Recovered Journeys Through Autism and Back. That is a visual, case study of 4 children who went through this. Shannon and I made an attempt when we had a little bit more time to write about this. I still have a desire to do that. I do have a lot of kids. I just recently made myself a list again of our kids. Shannon often talks about Jem, of course. We've on here talked a lot about Logan, our dear Logan, who is a very well-known and fantastic drummer, professional drummer. We have lots and lots of kids who I should spotlight in that sense, I guess. There's, it's not an easy thing, and some of our kids are very generous with their time, and they've including Jem, repeatedly they've come and spoken about their own journey and experience, and we've put the spotlight on them. Nick has also done this many times, but
It's hard.
It's hard because you kind of want to move on with your life, right? And you have so much going on in your life, and it's a favor, I think, that they do to us, that they come and do that. So that's why I kind of don't want to really, we started with interviewing a lot of our kids, and I have all of that still, but I want to just be able to kind of maybe write about them for parents, because I just don't want to keep going back and asking them to do more.
And the thing, when people say to me, why don't you have kids on the show every week? And I always say to them, you know why? Because they're out leading their lives. Yeah. That's why. Yeah. That's why they're not here talking endlessly about that. And I know everybody thinks, oh, well, those kids are all, there are some people on the speaker circuit that, talk about the fact that they had an autism diagnosis, and now they're, Dr. Carrie Magro is a great example of that. But that's not everybody's path.
Right.
And some of them are out, working.
Living their lives.
Working high-level jobs, just like, you guys are working jobs and you have families, and it's hard to take the time to do something else.
Yes.
Some of them are in a space where they're like, that's not how I want everyone to look at me, and I don't want that to be my story.
Right.
It's a part of me, but I'm on to other things. So, we have to be respectful of the fact that they're busy having their lives.
Absolutely. And Mike asks, have you ever tried to get some adults on the show to talk about what they remember when they were in therapy sessions?
We've done
we
that.
have.
We've done that.
And there are videos of the kids as adults talking about that. But also, there's even segments on the Recovered video where they're talking about it. A lot of times, Mike, what happens is that they don't remember much.
Yeah.
They do remember a lot of people. A lot of them have said, I just remember a lot of people in our house.
Right.
Because there were therapists coming in and going out, and there were a lot in those, a lot of this occurs in the homes, of course. So, but I will say, the majority of the kids, as Shannon said, are just kind of like they're living their lives, It's like, I don't really remember all that much. I do remember learning piano when I was young. I don't remember very much about my teachers. I don't remember much about, the detail of it. You know what I mean?
When people ask Jen that, he says, I do remember sometimes being frustrated with something because it wasn't going the way I wanted it to. Right. He says, just like school.
Yeah.
If you ask me about second grade, I will tell you I remember the day I was frustrated that this, and he says, but I also remember playing games.
Yeah.
And he goes, but I don't think of that as being the therapy, but I'm told that it was.
Right.
Right? So, like when we were in second grade, there were times when we were learning something and we might be frustrated, but then we would play a game and we don't think of that as learning.
Yeah.
But it was.
And you remember, if you think about it, that's a really good example. You remember so little.
Yeah, so little.
If you ask me, even fifth grade, right?
Yeah.
If I think about fifth grade, there's maybe 5 total memories I have about that entire year.
Right.
So, it's not something that they will hold on to and say, oh, yes, during these sessions, I felt that way,
And really, I would say that there's probably only 3 of our therapists that Jem really remembers.
Yeah, of course.
And I would venture that he remembers those because they've continued to stay in our lives.
There you go. Also,
that I run into Amy at Whole Foods all the time.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And so he gets to see her, and it's like an ongoing thing.
Right.
But otherwise I don't, and it's sad to say because she was such a light in our home.
Of course.
Right? But I don't think he remembers. I have video of him doing SpongeBob dances with her, but I don't think he remembers that.
Of course.
Of
course.
But anyway, I have to get you out the door because you have to be out the door on time. So I just want to say to everybody, we aren't able to show you the second video. I misspoke. But we'll show that tomorrow. Tomorrow's show, you know what we're going to be talking about? This is something I really have wanted to talk about for a while, and I'd love to talk about sometime with you, about kids that were in COVID and things that they missed and what we might want to focus on because they missed something.
Right.
I met a lot of people when I was gone that they were like, well, my child was this age during COVID. And I was like, oh, we need a little slide chart of things. So we're going to talk about what your child might have missed, what you might be seeing now, and what might be some things
That's
to
great.
focus on. So that's going to be tomorrow, and we'll show the other video tomorrow. But thank you for
Thank you.
and for everything that you do, and we'll let you go. But you guys, don't forget, get your tickets to the All Ghouls Gala now. They're selling fast. It's going to sell out, you guys, so if you're coming, you got to get your tickets. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Don't forget, you can watch Ask Dr. Doreen live every